One of the primary reasons for using RentPro is to keep track of rent and landlord balances. So in this tutorial, we'll review this functionality. In a previous session, we created a tenancy for our tenant, Tommy Tenant. So I'll first explain how to record receipts of both the security deposit and first month's rent. Financial transactions are recorded in the bank area. So I'll click on this in the main menu bar, and as we're recording the receipt of monies from our tenant, we'll select Tenant Transactions. We're now required to specify the property associated with our tenant. So we'll start to type the first line of the address, and when it becomes the selected item in our drop-down list, simply hit Return on your keyboard. We'll first record the security deposit payment. So I enter £800 in the receipt total box, and then select Security Deposit from the drop-down list. We need to record details of the transaction, specifically the date on which we received the monies, how the transaction was made, was it cash, cheque, and into which bank account we lodged the monies. After doing this, click on Submit Receipt. We now have the option of either printing or emailing the receipt of the transaction. Recording the receipt of the rent payment is very similar. Again, I'll enter £800 in the receipt total box, but this time I'll select tenant payment from the drop-down list. Again, specify a transaction date, how the payment was made, and into which bank account, and click on Submit Receipt. Now we can see that the security deposit has been paid and our rent balance is down at zero. But let's generate a few reports to look at things in a bit more detail. I'll first generate a statement for the tenant. We do this by selecting Reports from the main menu and then clicking on Tenant. We identify our tenant instance, click on Next. Only one type of tenant report is available, so I'll click on Next again. I'll select this month as the date range, and here we have our tenant statement. You'll see that it includes a security deposit section where we can see that we've received £800. Below this, you'll see that RentPro has applied a debit to the tenant based on the tenancy information that we previously specified. We can also see the rent receipt that we recently recorded, leaving a zero balance. As you can see, we have the options of either printing or emailing this statement. I'll also generate a second type of report, a landlord statement for our property 10 Osborne Promenade. Again, I start off by selecting Reports in the main menu, but this time I'll click on Property. I'll specify 10 Osborne Promenade as the property instance and click on Next. We want to generate a landlord report. This is selected by default, so click on Next again. Again, I'll use this month for the date range. And here we have our landlord statement. It shows that we've collected £800 in rent. RentPro has automatically deducted 10% from this as our management fee, which works out to be £80. Also deducted is the letting or tenant fine fee of £250 that we specified when we set up our tenancy. This RentPro account is configured to apply VAT to fees, so RentPro automatically makes a further deduction for this, leaving a balance due to the landlord of £404. So if we're paying this value out to the landlord, how do we record it in RentPro? It's a financial transaction, so again we'll go to the bank area. This time we're making a payment to the landlord, so we'll click on Landlord Transactions. We have to identify the landlord to whom we're making the payment, so I'll start to type his name. When it becomes available, I'll hit Return on my keyboard. As we already know, £404 is due to the landlord. I'm going to make a complete payment to him, so I'll click on Pay in Full. As with the tenant transaction, we must complete some details. We're going to make the payment from our client account and make it via a BACS transfer. I'll leave the date as is and click on Submit. As you can see, we have zero balance to the account. Let's see how this has impacted our landlord statement. As you can see, the report now details the payment that we've just made to the landlord, and there's a zero balance carried forward. Again, we have the option to print or email the report.